For my video, I'll be talking about the elderly and disaster. And for me, this is a great topic because I've had many personal, real-life experiences with this with my grandparents. And many people may think that having to deal with the elderly, if you will, in regards to evacuations and disasters may not be that big of a deal, but it's actually quite difficult. And because they're usually in worse physical shape already before the storm than us youngsters may be, and for example, they're slower moving, harder to get into confined spaces for safety. Say for say in Oklahoma, they have tornado shelters in the ground. It may be harder for them to get into the tornado shelters, or for hurricanes, and it may be harder to get into a car real quickly to evacuate to another area, or for flooding, it may be harder for them to get up into higher elevation in a very quick amount of time because they're so slow moving. And then you have to take into consideration the nursing homes and assisted living facilities, because there's a greater mass amount of the elderly and slower moving people in such a confined space that having to get all of the elderly out in such a quick amount of time is quite difficult. Because one reason being is that the staff of the facilities have to have more training to get them out of the facilities, and then you have to have the right equipment to do that, and it's honestly it's quite difficult. And for example, in Hurricane Katrina, when it hit New Orleans, 71%, or actually over 71% of the deaths in Katrina were of the elderly, because it was so hard to get to move them from point A to point B to a safer location, or to a higher elevation, say in the attic or something. And there's other storms and natural disasters that's occurred, but that's such a recent disaster and caused so much death that I thought it would be a good example. And then you have to take into consideration the mental capacity and confusion that the elderly have, say in regards to dementia or Alzheimer's, and because dementia and Alzheimer's patients have a much greater difficulty because of their forgetfulness and extreme confusion. And then that's what I've run into several times with hurricane evacuations and my grandparents. My granddad has dementia, and my grandmom has severe Alzheimer's, which continuously progresses. And so having to tell them what's going on without having to startle them too much, having to get all their belongings, say a walker here, having to get a walker, because my granddad has to use a walker, having to get him, who moves very, very slow, to get him very quickly to a safer location is very, very hard. And then having to get all their medications, such as this right here, if not more, and having to make sure that they have enough medication for say a week or two, in case phone lines are down, or a pharmacy may be closed, and such, and then having to explain to my grandma what's going on, and having to make sure that someone is always watching them, and during a storm, it takes a lot of people just to watch very, 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 very few elderly. And I think definitely, having gone through all these experiences, it'll definitely help me with each disaster we have to deal with. But with that being said, I think one good way to help with the elderly and keeping them in one location is just building their facility where they are, and having it hurricane proof with hurricane windows, and having a brick house, for example, because then you wouldn't have to evacuate them in most cases. And so there's a lot of things to take into consideration, a lot of funding that for facilities like nursing homes that they have to have aside just for the elderly, not just for the facility to keep it up and running. And so, with all that being said, thank you for watching my video.